and
Okay.
time to the cloud.
Please start recording. So, welcome everyone. And first I need to introduce myself. I'm Vitaly, and here is my co-host Eugene. And we are going to be having our second session in Team Driven Con. Team Driven Con is an online conference that we decided to conduct in a new format, 1 week intensives with daily Zoom sessions, a community in Slack, and our beautiful and smart top experts. Team Driven Conf helps people to build a career in IT through acquiring new skills and knowledge from our experts and the networking. We are organizing this event for the first time, so we've decided to start with a small step, 3 days meetup with 4 only sessions. All the sessions will be recorded, so you can view them later if you want. And our current topic, our current conference topic is the process of hiring of engineering managers. We chose this topic because pretty much every engineering manager or developer who wants to be promoted to an engineer manager will eventually have to search for a new position. And it's good to know in advance the peculiarities of the process. We will provide a few viewpoints for this process. One, we've already done. A couple of hours ago, we recorded the session with an overview of the job market done by Kirill Zubov. He's a specialist from Korn Ferry, huge HR consultancy firm. We will have 2 public interviews. One is currently going to be held, and a group CV review. We are really grateful to our experts for taking the time to participate in the conference. And we also want to introduce our main sponsor. It is Case.io, the company which creates a modern test management system for development and QA teams. Give it a try if you wish. And I will also have a few words to say about our rules. First, we have a code of conduct. Please read it on our website, but it's quite simple. Just be polite. And if you have any questions during our interview process, please pin them in the Q&A bar in your Zoom and feel free to chat. And with that, I want to introduce Vivek. So Vivek is an engineering manager, a very experienced one. He worked for Meta and he also used to work for Amazon. Vivek just said that he had interviewed more than 800 engineering managers in his career, which is unbelievably high number. And so really, we are really keen to try capturing his knowledge here. And our interviewee who volunteered to take part in this session is Glafira. Glafira is accessibility team lead at SpurIT. She is also Google development expert for web, and Glafira has been in IT for 10 years. She started as a front-ender, and for the last 2 years, she's been also managing teams. Glafira is pursuing her passion of raising the accessibility of our beautiful web. Thanks, guys, for coming. And Vivek, please proceed.
Absolutely. All right. So just to kind of set context for everyone who's listening, we will be starting the interview in about a minute from now. And I'll be asking a couple of questions that I typically ask for engineering managers to assess their skills. And then after we're done with that, I'll just do a quick narrative of why I asked those questions and what I'm looking for in those questions, and what are some suggestions or thought process around how we could answer those questions differently, if at all, right? So we'll do that. Thank you so much for this forum, and let's get going. All right. Hi, Glafira, how are you doing today?
How a bit nervous, but actually doing fine.
I'm doing great as well. Oh, please don't be nervous. I mean, this is just a conversation. I'm here to ask you a few questions. I have your resume. I've read through that, and I saw your LinkedIn profile as well. Pretty impressive. What I'm looking forward, absolutely, in this conversation is I had a few questions about some of your experiences. So that I can learn a little bit more about what you've done. And let's just walk through that. Before we do that, I just wanted to spend maybe a minute to understand what kind of role you're looking for. We have a bunch of different roles, and I'm just trying to make sure that the right fit for one of those roles. So what would be a good, what would be just take a few minutes and just explain what you're looking for in your next gig.
Yeah, of course. So as we heard before, maybe you didn't like you. It's a brand new experience. So I am working now as an accessibility team lead. So my focus is more on accessibility tasks, how to set them, how to manage people. So it's more like manager role, and I am more into people now. So in this case, I'm looking for some role which is more about people, about team needs, how to help them, like engineers to develop some process, to help them to to dive into some process. So this is what I'm looking for, like more about people than about engineering, but still sometimes I can help, I can understand some technical details, of course, especially if you have some accessibility related position, it would be nice because,
Absolutely.
I truly love
Absolutely,
this
absolutely.
topic.
No, and I think the accessibility. I think we have an entire work stream which is dedicated towards accessibility. So sounds like your experience and background would be something that will be a super fit for us. But before we talk more, and later we'll have a little bit of a question around. I'll give you some time in the end to ask any questions about us and any questions for me. But let's just jump right into a couple of areas that I wanted to probe. And the first one that I wanted to ask about is your generally about your people management experience. Just wanted to look at how many people are you supporting or managing right now as a team lead?
So for now, I have kind of two teams like I support my own ones. It's about 4 people, also plus one who doesn't relate to the particular team. So I would say 5. And the second one I'm kind of supporting as a manager. It has about 6 people in this team, including their tech team lead. So about 11, 12 people.
Got it. Just looking at your last maybe a year's year's experience. Can you give me an example of where you had a good interaction with one of your engineers and like a complex interaction where you had to support one of your engineers? What would that be?
I can recall the latest case. I have pretty complicated engineer from the very beginning. Like he's not complicated as a person, but sometimes he is like getting tired pretty fast and so on. So we had about 3 weeks ago we had a pretty nice one-to-one meeting, and at the very beginning of it, it was the first one-to-one for him. So at the very beginning, he started to talk about his burning out. So kind of he feels it, he understands the situation, like he feels like it affects his work. So he asked me for some help in this case, and we started the why is he burning out. So he told me a couple of things. Like first, he is occupied with pretty big and complicated tasks, and they are always the same. Like he's creating templates for web pages, and it's almost the same work, a bit different, like from template to template, but still. And he is tired of it. Also, he needs to fill these templates after creating them as a content manager, so it doesn't relate it to his developer's work, so it bothers him a bit. Also, he told me that he had some unfinished tasks and they are kind of occupating his mind too. So and yeah, and he has his like personal issues at home, so doesn't relate it to work. And yeah, it sounds like a normal developer sometimes. So yeah, then we started to find some solutions for him, like some actions for me and for him, some tasks for to do. And we decided he needs to go to vacation, but not the normal ones. Like we have preset vacation, it's about 2 weeks. But if you want more, you need to go to the highest management and ask them. So yeah, also we decided to free him from some tasks, at least try to free him from some tasks which are not related to his like skills. And yeah, and also we decided he will not like do anything more than he already has. It was from him his impact in this situation. Yeah, so I went to the managers, asked them to reconsider his tasks, which of them can be done later. We decided to skip some of them and yeah, to free him a bit, so he had chance to go to this vacation we set for him. And yeah, he finished everything because of his like he had more free time. Because he skipped some tasks, and yeah, he was able to finish some tasks before the vacation started. It was pretty cool because it's not about him at all. He's always taking his work to home sometimes, so not sometimes, always. As I
Mhm.
told all. Yeah, so something like this. And then we kind of decided to think of some future steps, like how to free him from this extra work with filling the pages with content. We decided to consider to hire one content manager, maybe with the developer skills, to free him a bit from this. So, and yeah, he went to vacation pretty happy about all the situation, full of energy. So I'm pretty happy too about this case.
Nice.
Yeah, it was nice to manage everything in this way.
Looks like it worked out pretty well. So what did you learn from this experience?
For me, it's more about understanding that he he is irreplaceable for now. So it shouldn't be like this. So we need to think about something to replace him, to make the developer like more replaceable. Even it will work even for me. Like I think I need to think about it by myself. Like I am pretty like rare specialist, so I need to to find some ways to develop to teach someone with the same skills, maybe not for me, for him. For me too. Yeah, so I just looked at the situation and understood I had the same problem, so we need to do it for him. Also, we understood that he was doing a lot because he didn't create some documentation which will help him in future to use these sections and not to look into the code once again. So yeah, that was a good understanding. uh, Kind of, yeah, something like this.
Got it. Interesting. What was the impact of actually doing this? I know that the engineer went on a sabbatical. That was good. But what was the impact to the projects and commitments that were already in place?
So for now, it's kind of continuous situation. So we're just trying to set everything in the right way for the future, and we're understanding we have some like lack of communication. So now we have this better process of communication. Like we have predefined meetings to go further with this situation. We have some ideas on people we can hire. I would say, yeah, and also for him, I hope like he understand better that he is like alive, not a machine. But yeah, still we need some work, do some work on this.
So when you describe the problem statement, you did mention one thing that caught my attention, where you said that the work was very repetitive and boring with very minimal changes between templates. How did you solve that?
For now, we we solve it from the code side. So we are reusing the existing code, trying to do our best not to copy this. So yeah, something like this. And also now we are trying to, we have no deployment process on this project. So it's another issue we need to solve, and it will help him to not to do the same things every time, like to deploy the project by himself. Like it's pretty difficult because it's almost FTP, you know, like with WordPress and so on. So yeah, we are thinking of some more modern solutions like Docker, continuous integration and so on. So yeah, this is our idea, and we're planning to plan it, to spend some time on it.
Nice. Good. Let's actually switch gears. I wanted to talk about another aspect which I believe is very important for your success here. So we are actually, one of the things that is very critical for us is to be able to scale impact and to be able to replicate success. And for that, we are actually looking for what kind of processes have you put in place, and how do you measure the effectiveness of those processes? So just looking back at the last year's experience, can you just give me an example of what kind of process change did you propose, and how did you get about going to implement that, and what problem were you trying to solve, and what did you do?
One of the most nice for our team was the idea to, it's not new one, but to develop the code review process. It sounds surprising, but we didn't have this process in our team before. Because we are working in really fast changing situation. Like we are an outsourced team, so our projects are pretty small. They take only from 1 to 3 months of development. So we need to be kind of efficient. And when I came to the team, at least I was used to code review before. So I worked for the previous company, and there was this process pretty well set. But for this team, it wasn't like this. And I saw we had troubles with deploying. Like I give my team lead a piece of code, and he spent a lot of time to add this code to the whole system, to recheck it. Of course, there are issues. Of course, it's difficult to merge everything when you have a lot of incoming code from 13 developers for the same project. So yeah, I suggested to only after I became a team lead, of course. Like I didn't crush his processes because he was pretty good at them anyway without code review too. But still, yeah, after I became a team lead, I decided to start this code review process in our team. We discussed it with the team, and we had a chance to implement it. At that time, we were pretty free, so we had the chance to do it as I was used to, like to have this system of 2 approves, like you have this pull request and 2 developers who are approving the pull request. So in our team, it worked like this for months or 2, but then we realized we are more occupied to do this, but still we decided to leave it. It's the better process for our teams. We have a lot of small tasks, so we was able to manage the project better, like especially for the future things. Like we had these branches for each task. In case we had some troubles in one branch, we could fix it. Of course, we did it through the branches before, but now we see the difference between the like main branch and the development branch. Yeah, we can leave there some comments. It was really nice to understand that my team was so sweet in these comments. Like they were so nice, polite. If they had time, they described the solution. They provided some ideas. They shared links. We also had calls about these pull requests and discussed them out loud, like what will be the better solution. Yeah, so it's more clear. We had more understanding of how we work, and also we could invite the new team members into this process, and they saw the code base. They saw, because we work with really like with the system where you need to learn everything from scratch, almost from scratch. Like Shopify has its own ideas, templates, and so on. So it was really useful for the new developers to see the code of more old developers. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, but still we had this issue with the first project, and no one can review you. So only team lead can do this for you. And of course, one day we faced the moment when even team lead couldn't do the review. So and it's now like almost like this. So team lead reviews you sometimes, and sometimes we have kind of like common calls, but still it's not always. So this is kind of for future ideas, how to fix this, how to still have a possibility to check the code, because we see how useful it's for our projects. Even if it takes more time, it helps us in future. We have less bugs, less troubles during the client's review. So yeah, I really miss the time when we were free to do everything. Yeah. So, but still, and I feel like developers need this process. So like they come to us, they ask for some new practices, not new, but nice practices. In this case, it's not new. Yeah, they had it in the previous companies. So when I say we have code review, and we really try to have it at least for
nice. No, it seems fairly non-controversial here, and I think definitely looks like you've got positive responses from the engineering side of the story. Was there any pushback from the management or the project manager because of the delays that you're talking about?
Sometimes yes, sometimes they ask us not to do this, so not to spend time on the code review and just rely on the team lead's decision. Yeah, so sometimes
How did
we
you handle
face
that?
it. For now, we just kind of nice and agree, but I feel like we need to, to at least to give them something, something nice too, like not the code review, but some other nice practices to keep them, inspired still. Like we have, for example, internal meetups, technical meetups. So sometimes it covers the lack of code review. But in case and also we're sure about the developers' code, so we already know their code style and so on. So there are some developers which are not that related to the code review. I'm not sure. Yeah, but there are some young, I would say, developers, new developers, and we still give them this practice, still show them they can be reviewed, especially if they ask. So I ask them to ask if they really need the code review now in the rush, and I find time, and the other team lead finds time to review them.
Got it.
This is our current
No,
solution.
awesome. So this is good. So let's actually move to another topic, but just for the benefit of people who are watching, listening, I normally cover a third part of the equation, which is like the product, which is just around the domain and technology. But given that I may not have a lot of experience here, I defer that to a different interviewer for a later round, or an interviewer may cover this as well. I'd love to jump on to the next angle, which I want to focus on, which is essentially communication. Super important for being a manager, and communication usually comes in three flavors: talking to, how do you communicate the team's context upstream to your managers and superiors, and how do you communicate with your engineers and essentially provide them some feedback and guidance, and kind of convey what's called the org context. And then the third one is essentially more around collaborative communication with your peers, where you really don't have a lot of power, but just persuasiveness. So I'd like to focus on the third one, which is, can you give me an example of where you had like a disagreement with a peer team or a peer manager, or who's your peer, not someone that you report to or who reports into you. And I'm curious to understand, what was the disagreement about, and how did you go about solving that, and what was the end result?
It's nice you asked this. Like it's pretty recent situation, so it's still continuing now. But we already have some agreement on this, some solutions. So yeah, let me let me tell you in short details. So as I told you, we have these fast projects, and our partners have clients, and these clients are not always understand the process we have, and because we work through the partners. It seems like sometimes we lack some information from the client, their priorities. Sometimes we have really small period of time to develop the project, because it was not our company who decided about these estimates and so on. So we were just pushed to them. So sometimes the situation is pretty stressful, and of course, when everyone is in a rush, it's stress for everyone still, but there are some issues highlighting during this process. And for us, it was once I understood that we had some troubles with the tasks which were set by clients, but we just took them, like our project manager is on this, he is taking the task from the client system and just copy and paste it to our Jira. In this case, he doesn't check the task because it's kind of more a team lead. Maybe in his or in our process, it came like this. But somehow it became like this. He just copy and paste. And there are some tasks which developers don't understand. And during the previous 2 weeks, we had no team lead. He was at the vacation, and developers needed to be really careful with these tasks, because they took them by themselves and worked on these tasks, and they needed to ask some questions, of course. So in this case, the situation was like the developer sees the task, doesn't understand its text, and immediately goes to the PM, who is immediately, with no asking questions, asking the client. So there is no try to understand the problem. Of course, we had no team lead for that team, but we had me, and I was more familiar with the project than our PM, I mean, from the technical part. And it appeared that sometimes our questions are oh my god, I forgot the word. So we write them sometimes not in the language the client used, so it was translated in the wrong way or something like this, and never checked. So it became a huge trouble, and it cost us like a lot of time to fix this after all. So like we spend a lot of time on this miscommunication. Like we already have answers for the questions, but not our project manager. but me, for example, or the other manager. So, and we don't ask, like, just go immediately to the client. So this was the issue. I decided to talk with both the team and the manager to understand where it came from. I found out that developers just didn't know the environment of the task, and there was no environment in this task from the client side. And also, the project manager he told me, like, I was in a rush, so sorry, of course, but yeah, I'll do my best to fix this, but still we've lost time. And the kind of maybe clients will be angry at us in the future, but I hope we'll fix it. So then I came to the project manager and I had a talk first with him, like, how do you feel about it? Maybe we can do some changes. So what do you think of some solutions, how to fix this situation? He suggested me, like, not his, yeah, we came to the solution together. Yeah, to first to go not to the PM but to the team lead to ask some questions from the developer side. But with him, we decided to to lower the stress of the situation, at least in words, because every meeting starts with some, oh, these clients are like worst in the world and so on. So I asked him, like, lower the stress level, at least, and be a bit more attentive to the tasks and to the questions of the developers. Read them first and then send to the client, maybe, if it's needed, or come to me and ask, is this a real question, or should we change it to something else, or should we don't even ask the questions? Yeah, so something like this. And it was, this solution was to talk, and now we are testing this solution, how it works, but our other team lead came back, so it's easier for us now.
No, but this is good. I mean, I think being a little more it is a tad bit reactive, but also being proactive with the conversation is actually pretty nice. Think that so this is amazing. This is phenomenal. So this actually kind of brings us to the close of the discussion portion that you're actually having. And what I wanted to do is, as I promised, I'm going to give you a few minutes to ask any questions that you may have about the role, about the team, about the company, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Yeah, so as I told you, I manage not that big team. How big team, like, do you know the manager to manage in your case?
We have a couple of positions that we're looking at, and it's actually a mix. There's one which actually has about 6 engineers. There's one which has about 12. But again, the teams are kind of growing, and it's in a flux because we're also in the middle of a reorg, which essentially means that we're going to shuffle a few things around. The position actually is being created because of the shuffle. So we are combining a few different teams. We have noticed that accessibility is primary importance to us. So we want to spin up a new org specifically focused on accessibility. So that's kind of what we're looking at you for based on your background experience. So I think it should be about 6 to 8 people. You'll probably also have to start hiring 3 more immediately after you join.
Cool. So, and do you have this I would say guides for the hiring process, for example? So should I bring something with me, or do you have something predefined?
How to hire into the company? So the process is actually fairly well set. We have an amazing recruiting team that focuses. You must have interacted with some already as a part of your process. So we have a great recruiting team that actually does a pretty good job of scouring competitors, LinkedIn, and a bunch of other places to get them into the process. But what's important is actually that we are not a super big player in the space. So it will require us to provide some guidance and feedback and demonstration of why they should join our company, and that's going to be the key. And the big thing that I want you to have is essentially around like, enthusiasm for the product that we have, a good vision for what we're trying to accomplish, empathy for the customer because it's accessibility, it's important and whatnot, and also be able to paint a picture of how the engineer can grow and progress in their career here as a part of our organization with you, so that they get a better sense of like, oh, I will be better supported here and it's a better value of my time to be in this company. So that's kind of the thing that that I'm looking for in this role. Like hiring is going to be definitely tricky because again, you'll almost be adding 50% of workforce in your team, right? So that's going to be good. And retention is always tricky in this economy. So I'm very, very interested in trying to make sure that you are comfortable handling the people side of the story.
Cool, thank you. What would you say about the first like challenges? What should I do first joining the team?
I think that the thing here it's very, very interesting is that the team is very naive in terms of our accessibility items. So we don't know enough about it, and so we'd love for you to bring in your awareness and your knowledge and your prior on what the best practices are and how those things work. So that will be one, I think, a big part of what you will be doing is not just working with the team, but also socializing this amongst the company as well, because the directors and the VPs, they kind of sense a need, but they don't understand the value of like, what happens if I spend 6 months or for a developer in this, like, what am I going to get back, right? Is it like, how many dollars? The answer is zero, maybe, I don't know. So that's like, I would love to hear your thoughts on how you would quantify that. So that's one that I think is very important. Hiring, as I mentioned, is also going to be a big challenge because you'll be coming into a team with some open spots for you to fill. And then the third thing, of course, is again, we have a development plan for you. Like when you come in the first 90 days, what would you work on? I mean, our domain is a little different from what you're used to. So you may have to understand the business side of the story a little bit. The people and the process aspects of it are somewhat, we are comparatively a larger firm than where you're coming from. So there are some well-established processes that we have, which you may not be completely familiar with, but I'm not worried about that as much. It's just process you learn.
Cool. I also wanted to ask, just came to this question. Do you have some learning programs for the developers, like internal? Of course, I think you do, but especially on, for example, on accessibility. Maybe if not, maybe you would like to build some, because I'm really into the idea to share my experience to the whole. Not the whole, I understand it's a big amount of people, but still to share some knowledge. So do you have some kind of these learning activities?
Yeah, learning is actually one of the fundamental, culture values that we cherish, and growing people and learning is very, very key. So we have like a couple of programs. There's one which is where we do reimburse some parts of your learning, but it has to meet certain criteria. So if you have some guidance or recommendations, that would be awesome. The other thing that we do is where we have people come in and teach and present to each other. And that's like a more regular program. It happens at various levels. We have a team level one where we just teach the team, and that's usually for knowledge sharing and whatnot. So very similar to what you're using your code reviews for in your example, but something similar, but it's just for new hires and ramp ups. And then the second thing is actually at a slightly more organizational level, where we provide some kind of like, here's what's happening, the trends in the industry and things like that. Usually that's a very good recruiting tool as well, because when people want to do internal transfers, they want to transfer into teams that are doing exciting work. So if you're able to pitch the concepts and also explain why these are important and how you're solving them, you will find a couple of other people from other teams interested in joining your team. So it's a very good recruiting tool. And these things actually, on a personal basis, they do count towards your success factors. So when we measure you at the end of the year to figure out how effective you are as a manager, these things will actually go into it. Like you helping the company's overall knowledge quotient is something that is valued by the company, and it's rewarded as well as a part of ratings.
Sounds cool. I want to be hired.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks for the explanation.
No, this is amazing. So thank you so much for taking the time. And this will actually formally bring this interview process to a close. And you should be hearing back from the recruiter very soon about the next steps and how we want to proceed forward. All right. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much.
All right. Back to Vitaly for a minute or two to say, how do you want to summarize? And then I can do my
Well, first I want to say thank you for you both, because public interview takes quite a significant amount of courage. So thank you, Glafira, and thank you, Vivek, for doing this. And now I really want to see and to hear your feedback, Vivek.
So let me run through the feedback quickly, and then I know as people have questions, actually maybe putting them in the Q&A tool would be easier. Then we can just address them and then we can mark them. Or I see some questions in the chat. So Whitley, if you can just maybe push that to the Q&A tool, that would be helpful. So I think overall the interview was actually it went well. We had a good conversation. I felt the rapport. I felt a lot of energy in terms of like, you were invested in the interview as such. And one of the things, of course, I'm always like, passively assessing is, are you interested in working? Are you just like, I'm just like, wasting my time and your time, right? That aspect of it. So you came across as someone who's very interested. You're looking for career growth as well. Especially the any questions for me, the end, you asked very specific questions about like, how does learning work? Though you didn't ask about performance and assessments, I talked about that. And then you were very interested in that aspect as well. So to me, it sounds like if offered a job, you would more likely than not take it. I mean, the negotiation salaries aside. So those were all pretty good. So that I really loved it. And that was good. Second part of the conversation overall is that exchange of information. Like I felt like I was able to ask the right kind of questions and extract the signals that I need to get to a high confidence decision. The decisions may not be positive or negative, but there are cases where I have the interview and I feel at the end of the interview, I feel like, I don't think I've extracted everything I can. And I'm not comfortable making a yes or a no decision. I mean, certain parts of it were bad, so I think it's a no, but I think I could have asked a few more questions and I could have gotten it to a yes or something. So from that perspective, I feel very confident and comfortable with the amount of information that we were able to discuss in this interview. So that's actually a very, very, very positive sign, because then at least we can, make or break as the case may be, right? So that's good. Going from the top, breaking it down one at a time, the very first thing that I asked you was essentially like an opening pitch, which is like an elevator pitch about why should I hire you, pretty much. And I know we had a very brief discussion about this interview, this panel discussion, whatnot, and this was more of a surprise. I didn't prep you for that enough. But again, elevator pitch is something that you should have. It's about 90 seconds and you should be covering the value proposition, like, what are you good at? What are you passionate about? And it should just be like a very fluent, this is what I do. This is where I rock. This is what my hobby passions are. Here's where I excel. This is what I value I bring to the table, and things like that. It's very, very simple. Prepare it and rehearse it to a point where it actually doesn't appear rehearsed. It should be like a natural conversation. Like if I ask you, what's your favorite vacation spot, you can talk about it, right? You should be able to talk about this the same way. Like it should be intrinsic to you, not feel rehearsed. Very easy to do, super high value. And I think more than 2/3 of the interviews will definitely ask you something like this. And for the rest of them, you'll find a way you can inject this somehow in the conversation. If someone asks you about something, you can always bring it in. So that was one part that was interesting from the beginning. For the people question, I think that was actually a pretty good answer in the sense that what did you do and what was the issue? I love the fact that you demonstrated empathy towards the engineer's situation. They required a break, a sabbatical. That's actually amazing. And then a lot of good quality, good context there. So I think I really appreciate, I think that, I wish you were my manager, because if I have an issue, I know that I'm in good hands, and someone who's actually willing to go bat for me, go upstream a couple of, is not afraid to go against or like to escalate to get me what I deserve rightfully, right? So I think that was actually very well done. I like that, and that particular part of it was good. The part that actually I didn't dig in a little more, but I was missing signals on maybe here, and not very relevant as much, is that I wanted to dig a little bit more into, if I had time, I would have, on how did you detect this? Did the engineer bring it up to you, or did you have mechanisms to detect this? Because very often engineers will not tell you that they're actually having a problem, and they will tell you that I'm gone or I'm doing this or whatnot, and like wish you had told me months in advance. I could have solved this when it was a smaller issue.
Is intuition a good mechanism for it?
It is harder to replicate intuition, unfortunately. So in an interview, you may want to actually demonstrate as to how even your intuitions are structural in the sense that you would actually ask questions. You spend time thinking about like all the engineers, are they happy? And I'm seeing like, I can see that the engagement levels of the engineer going down, and I can intuitively feel that the engineer is not happy, right? So there has to be something that you're objectively looking at. But that's the piece that I'd be looking at there. Just like answering a question real time. Andre's question is, do you think the amount of context provided within the answer to the people question was little, enough, or too much? I think it was appropriate. It was not too little. It was a little, maybe slightly on the verbose side, because I think there were pieces that were provided which did not really help the answer in and of its own. Like, some parts of it made so much sense and some parts of it didn't. So it's a hard call. You're an interview, it's a pressure cooker, nervous situation. So I think, like, being more than 80% valuable in terms of words is probably fine.
May I add quickly here? Some people have this instinct to rush and to add more words. Some people tend to just shut up. So it just might happen.
Yeah, no, but there was fluency in how you were talking about the conversation and narrative. So that was good. If you were a little nervous, which was very obvious, and that actually caused you to speak a little more than what you would have, and you would have probably noticed that as an interviewer, I was actually quiet and silent, like I was not even interrupting you, and like, letting you just go do the talking and whatnot. And that essentially would mean at some point around you have to figure out, like, some interviews will interrupt you more, which is probably better. But if they don't, then you may want to find the right place to stop so that you're fine. And you maybe went a little longer than in some cases, but I think it was reasonably appropriate. So that's I think that's good narrative there. Yeah. So let me just quickly cover one more aspect of this one is the follow-up questions I was asking about, like, the impact of what happened when you delayed the projects and things like that. I mean, you had an answer, but I was not very impressed with the outcome there. I mean, I may have to go back and listen to it. Maybe I've taken some notes. Based on my notes, I just felt like, you touched upon one aspect of it, which is the bus factor and the replaceability and, like, having resilience and things like that. That is amazing. That's a good lesson that you've learned from that. But I think there was, and it was just that it felt like you had more problems that you had to solve, and you only solved some parts of it. It just didn't seem like a comprehensive solution. At least that's a perception I'm taking away as an interviewer. Whether it's the reality is not as different.
I would add here, potentially, Glafira, just for you, just a feedback for you. If you limit the amount of information you're providing, then it's going to be easier for the interviewer to actually understand what exactly precisely you're talking about. That's what Vivek was saying, I think. Absolutely. So that was good. The process side of it was the second question that we talked about. I think you were a little apologetic about, like, hey, code reviews is such a basic thing and we don't have it. I'm so sorry about it. Like, no, it's not. There are enough companies that don't do code reviews. I mean, it's like, flying by the seat of pants is very, very common everywhere. So, and people do check it in. And then, so that part of it, I think you can own it. Like, this is it. It was a broken process, even though it was like obvious, it was broken. I mean, clearly, 2 dozen, 3 dozen people didn't think it was necessary, right? But in this case, you have easy ways to figure out what's broken. And I think that was good. What I didn't get out of it was actually around the genesis of it. Like, why did you think that code review was the right solution? And what was the thing that led you to it? In the sense, like, were there too many issues? Were people not ramped up sufficiently, or whatnot? Or, like, you didn't have enough resiliency or bus test in your team. So you're like, this is not right. Like, I have 2 team tech leads and they don't know each other's space. That doesn't make sense. You know what? Do code reviews so that way you get ramped up on each other's, something like that, right? There has to be something there which I think we couldn't get to the bottom of. But the process itself, the rolling out of the process. So when I look at process, I'm looking at why was the process put in place in the first place? That was there. Second thing is, like, how did you convince people to roll this out, and how did you deal with the discontinuities in the answer? And that part of it was good. You talked about how it was rolled out, how different people reacted to it, and all of that was good. The third part of course, is that I asked about pushback from the client teams and whatnot. You may want to rethink that.
because if the answer is like, yeah, they pushed back and they didn't want it. So a couple of things I would actually do. I'm a little territorial when it comes to that. Like, engineering process is my domain. I'm the engineering manager. I figure the engineering process out for the global optimization and Maxima. And guess what? With the process, we are better on the whole. Without the process, we are not better actually. And we don't have enough resiliency, which means next time you come to me with an issue, I will not have an engineer to spare because the only guy who knows this is actually on vacation. So you're not going to like it. So it's my job as a manager to manage my resource pool and their knowledge and the quality of the output in a way that is for the global maxima. Educating that to the client team would have been the right choice there, and explaining it to them why you're doing it and how you're doing that, and proving it with numbers, eventually saying that, look, our velocity has actually gone up in the last 3 months this has been in place, or something like that, and the defect rate has gone down, and the number of reactivates or repeat incidences have gone down. Whatever that number is, like, talking about that would be an answer. If you don't have any of those data points, you would probably want to create those data points and talk about that. So that answer was a little subpar, in my opinion. I'm being a little harsh here when I say that, but I think that can easily be amplified. I mean, you have a good story. All you have to do is to find the right data points to actually highlight that better. And then the product is a third P, which we didn't talk about at all. Usually it'll be around either the accessibility domain, or it'll be the web domain, or something about WordPress, something about Shopify, or whatever templates that you're talking about and whatnot. We may actually spend about a little bit of time figuring out, like, how did you solve a complex problem there? Maybe SEO, maybe something else in the domain that you're familiar with. Like, I don't have enough insight, so I can't ask too much there. Last thing that we talked about was communication. That one, it was an interesting conversation. I mean, it was a good communication gap item, and I think the part I really appreciated there was actually talking about how you were handling it at an interpersonal level, like, talking to the person, asking them to bring the stress levels down, as you said it, but, like, just making sure that you're able to elevate, reduce the pressure of the conversation, makes it much more easier overall. That is good. The one feedback that I may have is seeing if you can actually articulate this in well-known terms or industry standard terms, in the sense that, if you talk about, I was actually focusing on giving them a feedback around, like, what was the impact that their communication was having on other people, so they can see that what they're doing, they can get what they want more effectively if they didn't do that and they actually did it. Like, telling us in a calm way that we need this done is much easier and has a greater chance of success than what you just did, which essentially had this negative impact on the team, and it just is not very positive overall. And that particular piece, I think you said that the right way in your conversations, and I'm sure you must have done it the right way. But when you are communicating that interview, try to use industry standard terms around it, or things that are more common vernacular that will actually help in this case. Okay. All right, with that, I think that's the interview. I don't have an overall assessment for you, unfortunately, because it's not we didn't do all parts of the story. But for the parts that I actually covered, I think I'm super happy on the people side of the story. I think I definitely say a yes on the people. Process, I'm a little mixed, tending towards a yes. Communication is probably a yes, but it could be a no, depending on how it actually shows up in other interviews that we'd have. So you're relatively on the positive side right now, based on my interview at this point. But depending on your performance in other interviews, it could probably be super yes, or it could probably slip to no based on how we think. Anyway, so that's all my feedback, and back to you. Before you go to Whitley, I just wanted to hear if you had any, Glafira, if you had any thoughts on how you think the interview went.
Oh, I think it's really cool, really helpful. Also, a lot of information for me. Like, even if I prepare something, I still have things to improve. So this is really cool. I feel like I can be more specific in my experience and provide you with more details, like numbers, I would say, because it's not my good part, but still. Thank you so much. It's really helpful in such small time. I got so many cool ideas. It's really cool. I'm less stressed about thinking about the future interviews now. Yeah, awesome. So thank you.
Back to you, Whitley.
Thank you so much, folks. That was really, really interesting. Thank you, Vivek, and thank you, Glafira. For those who are listening to us now, we are searching for a candidate for the next group, sorry, next interview, which is going to be held on Wednesday. So if anyone wants, do come to our Slack and announce that you want to volunteer to become an interviewee. It will be as smooth as it is now. We will have another great engineering manager who will be interviewing you, Vidal. He is really good as well. And thank you, folks, so much for coming. The recording will be added to our Slack, and everyone will be able to see it if they wish. And folks, if you have anything to discuss, once again, do come to Slack. We will proceed discussing there. I will share my experience if needed. I will provide everyone will be there. Thank you, folks.
And awesome. They're like
everything on time. Very good.
Yeah, no, I think there's one question at least in the Q&A at this point. We could discuss this off live or on live as you see fit.
We have 3 minutes. Let's proceed.
All right. So the question is saying, what are some signals that you can use to detect if an engineering, if the engagement levels or engineering is going down, engineers are going down? I use a couple of factors. One is like every engineer is different. I have few engineers who are very loud and active, and they're like, they would be very excited about a bunch of things that they do. So if their energy levels go down, like the silence, you can always hear and you can always see that works. That's easy to detect, at least in proactive engineers, if they stop doing that. The part that I actually look at is a couple of things actually. I'm looking at the productivity metrics that we see. So we actually see how often the engineer is producing code, how often they're actually describing a success story of theirs. So we have the habit of, we write a post which talks about like, hey, I did this amazing thing, and this is what was the impact to the customers and whatnot. And then people write their own thing. We use that for our end of year performance reviews as is. So that's like a habit. But if I look at an engineer hasn't done that kind of a success post in like a month, then I kind of know that something is going on. So I usually ask them about what are they working on, why is it important, and things like that. And if they can't think about it or if they can't talk about it, it usually means that they are disengaged about some way. So I have one-on-ones with my engineer every week, and as a part of the conversation, one of the things is like, what are you working on? And I just talk about like, why do you think it's important, right? It's not, I don't ask that question, but I'm trying to get that as the feedback from them. So usually it's reasonable to detect, but again, as Glafira said, it is actually about intuition. Like you need to, you will feel as a manager, like, somewhere, like, I think something is off, and that's where it matters. And if you care about your engineers genuinely, I think this will automatically come up. And I know it's like a non-answer here. But there is an interview perspective. Like in an interview, I talk about metrics and how I'm scientific about it. But in reality, it tends to be more around like a hunch that comes because of intuition, and then we probe. Go ahead, Ridley.
And also, as we work in socio-technical systems, there is no proper way to deduce the exact output that the developer did, because we are working in a team. So it's more of a hunch. I will fully agree with that. So you can't say just, this guy did so many lines of code, he's better now.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome.
Thank you, everyone. That was quite a pleasure.
Thank you, everyone.
Agree. Thank you so much.
So let's wrap it up. Thank you once again, and see you in Slack, and see you next time. Thank you, Vivek. Thank you, Glafira. Eugen?
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Thanks.
That was
Have a
amazing.
nice
Yeah.
evening.
Yeah.
See
We're
you.
stopping recording now. Done.